I still remember the sound of his laughter that morning. It was sharp, cruel, and cold. My husband, the man I gave my youth to, looked at me like I was a stranger. He said, "It's over, Leah. I've found someone better." His eyes sparkled as if betrayal was a prize. I stood frozen, my heart sinking into the floor. He had been seeing his secretary for months, and now he wanted to show the world. He left with her on his arm, not even hiding the affair anymore. The worst part wasn't just losing him, it was what he took from me. The mansion we built together, the Tesla I drove with pride, both were signed over to him in the divorce settlement. I watched him smile as movers carried away furniture I had picked, curtains I had sewn, and memories we had made. My neighbors whispered from their lawns. To them, I was the broken wife abandoned for someone younger. When he drove off in the Tesla, he rolled down the window and laughed again. That laugh haunted me. It was the sound of someone who believed he had won forever. But he was wrong. Before I tell you how I got my revenge, hit that like button and tell me in the comments where you're watching from. Trust me, you'll want to hear how this ends. Before betrayal poisoned everything, there had been love. I remember standing beside him as we first walked through the land where the mansion would rise. His hand was warm, his voice full of promises. He said, "This house will be ours forever, Leah." I believed him, because back then, I wanted to believe. We spent late nights sketching ideas, choosing tiles, arguing over paint colors, then laughing at how silly we sounded. The mansion was more than walls, it was proof of our teamwork, proof of a dream stitched together with patience and hope. I thought we were unbreakable. Every detail carried our fingerprints: the oak staircase we polished together, the kitchen where I baked his favorite meals, the garden I planted with roses because he said roses reminded him of me. Those roses bloomed even when life grew heavy. Sometimes I sit and wonder when the love began to fade. Was it the day he stopped waiting up for me at dinner? Or when his eyes looked past me as if searching for someone new? I never saw it coming, but maybe the seeds of betrayal had been planted long before. I just hadn't noticed. If losing my husband's love hurt, his mother's words carved even deeper wounds. From the start, she never believed I was good enough. She smiled politely in public, but her eyes told the truth, cold, sharp, and judging. When the divorce was announced, she wasted no time choosing sides. She stood beside her son, arm linked with his secretary, as if the new woman had already replaced me. "Leah," she said sweetly, "at least now he has someone who truly understands him." Her voice was sugar, but the poison dripped between every word. Neighbors and family friends whispered that she encouraged him to leave, whispering daily that I was a burden, that I wasted his potential. And I, foolishly, had once tried to win her approval by cooking her meals and tending her garden. Now she smirked as the mansion's doors closed behind me, her victory complete. I remember her leaning close, her perfume too strong, her voice cutting like glass. "Don't come back here, Leah. This house is no longer yours." Love revenge stories? Subscribe now. We drop new ones every week, raw, emotional, and full of justice. Don't miss the next chapter. I walked away, silent. My hands trembled, but my eyes stayed dry. Because in that moment, I promised myself, her words would not be the final chapter. The divorce came faster than I ever imagined. One morning, a lawyer arrived at my door with a heavy envelope. Inside were papers filled with cold words, division of assets, signatures, deadlines. My heart pounded as I read each line. The mansion, gone. The Tesla, gone. Accounts I thought we shared, emptied. I sat at the table, hands trembling, as ink became a weapon. My husband's lawyer argued that everything belonged to him. I had no voice. My years of loyalty, my endless sacrifices, meant nothing in a courtroom filled with strangers. The judge spoke in a steady tone, and with a strike of his gavel, my world was handed away. When it was over, he didn't even look at me. He walked out holding the secretary's hand, smiling as if he had won a prize. She glanced back at me, her smirk saying everything: I was replaceable. I carried a single suitcase out of the mansion that once felt eternal. My neighbors watched from their porches, pity in their eyes. I lifted my chin, forcing myself not to cry in front of them. That night, in a small rented room, I whispered to myself, "This is not the end." The mansion's golden halls were replaced with peeling paint and flickering lights. My new apartment was on the third floor of a rundown building. The stairs creaked, the walls smelled of damp, and the window barely opened. It felt nothing like home, but it was all I could afford. At night, I listened to the sound of pipes groaning and rats scratching in the walls. The noise made sleep almost impossible, but silence was worse. Silence reminded me of everything I had lost. I missed the garden where roses bloomed, the wide kitchen where I once cooked, and even the Tesla's quiet hum. Now, I counted coins to pay rent and rode the bus with tired strangers. The landlord was rough but fair. He shrugged when I asked about repairs, telling me, "You get what you pay for." His words stung, but I didn't argue. I kept my head down, working odd jobs. Some days I cleaned houses that looked too much like the one I had lost. I smiled politely, though inside, I felt invisible. Every night I whispered the same promise: one day, I would rise again. One day, the laughter of betrayal would be silenced. The nights were the hardest. During the day, I kept myself busy with cleaning jobs and errands, but when the sun went down, the silence wrapped around me like chains. I lay on a thin mattress, staring at the cracked ceiling, and memories poured in like floods. I remembered laughter around the dinner table, his hand brushing mine, the way we once dreamed about growing old together. Now those memories stabbed deeper than knives. He was living in our mansion, driving my Tesla, while I sat in a room that smelled of mildew. Sometimes I cried quietly, pressing my face into the pillow so no neighbor would hear. Other times, I forced myself to stay strong, whispering, "Don't break, Leah. Don't give them the victory." I looked at old photos hidden in a drawer. In them, I looked happy, almost glowing. I barely recognized that woman anymore. The reflection in the mirror showed someone older, thinner, worn down by betrayal. But even on the worst nights, a spark inside refused to die. I didn't know how or when, but I told myself the truth: the story wasn't finished. Somewhere ahead, my chance would come. My family saw the weight I carried, even when I tried to hide it. My brother visited often, knocking gently on the broken door. He brought food, blankets, and sometimes just his company. "Leah," he said softly, "you don't have to do this alone." My mother called every evening, her voice full of worry. She offered me her spare room countless times. But pride held me back. I didn't want pity. I didn't want to be seen as the abandoned wife, fragile and broken. I needed to prove to myself that I could stand on my own, even if it meant living in shadows for a while. Their kindness touched me, yet I pushed it aside. I told them I was fine, though my eyes betrayed me. At night, their words echoed in my heart, reminding me I was still loved, still seen. But stubbornness can be both strength and prison. I carried the burden alone, believing that someday I would find a way to rise again. As I lay awake, listening to the pipes hiss, I whispered, "Not yet, but soon." I didn't know it then, but my soon was closer than I imagined. One afternoon, while cleaning an office downtown, I overheard two women talking near the coffee machine. They were gossiping about my ex-husband and his new wife. I froze, pretending to wipe the counter, but my ears caught every word. "Did you hear? They're already arguing about money," one whispered. "The secretary thought life in that mansion would be perfect," the other replied. "But the bills are piling up. Maintenance is a nightmare." I almost laughed. The mansion wasn't just beautiful, it was expensive. The taxes, the repairs, the endless upkeep. When we lived there, I had managed the details, paying bills on time, calling workers, handling repairs. He never noticed the work because I made it look easy. Now, without me, the dream was turning into a burden. The thought brought me no joy, only quiet understanding. They thought they had stolen paradise, but they had taken a cage of gold. I walked home with a new sense of calm. For the first time in months, I felt the ground shifting, even slightly, in my favor. Betrayal had thrown me down, but cracks were already showing in their perfect picture. And cracks, I knew, always spread. Life did not change overnight, but I refused to sink deeper. I started taking small jobs wherever I could find them. Some days I cleaned offices, other days I helped paint walls or mend furniture. My hands ached, but work kept my spirit alive. One kind shop owner hired me part-time. He said, "I see fight in you, Leah. Don't give up." His words gave me strength I didn't know I still carried. I saved every dollar, no matter how small, keeping coins in a jar by my bedside. Through these jobs, I met people who treated me with respect, not pity. They saw my effort, not my loss. For the first time since the divorce, I felt like I mattered again. At night, I sat by the window, planning. I wrote simple goals in a notebook: save money, learn new skills, stay steady. They were small steps, but each one felt like a stone in the bridge back to myself. Though my ex-husband's laughter still echoed in my memory, I no longer felt crushed by it. Every day I worked, I whispered to myself, "You took my mansion, but you will not take my future." One chilly morning, as I swept the small shop where I worked, a black car stopped outside. A man in a sharp suit stepped out. He looked too important for our neighborhood, and my chest tightened with unease. He walked straight to me. "Mrs. Black?" he asked politely. I froze. It had been months since anyone called me that name. "Yes," I whispered. He introduced himself as Mr. Harold Grant, the longtime lawyer of my ex-husband's family. "I need to speak with you privately," he said, his voice calm but serious. My heart raced. What could his family possibly want with me now? We sat in the shop's back room. He placed a slim leather folder on the table. "Before his passing, your former father-in-law left behind instructions, ones not shared during the rushed estate process." I stared at the folder, my palms sweating. "Leah," Mr. Grant said softly, "you were not forgotten. There are documents your ex-husband doesn't know exist." My breath caught. Could this be real? For months, I had been treated as if I was nothing, discarded like old paper. Now, with that folder before me, everything felt ready to change. I reached for the folder with trembling fingers. Inside were several sealed envelopes, each marked with my name in careful handwriting. I recognized the script immediately. It belonged to my ex-father-in-law, Charles Black. I swallowed hard as Mr. Grant explained, "Charles trusted you more than anyone. He believed you deserved security after what his son did." The first envelope contained a letter. My eyes blurred as I read, "Leah, I watched the way you stood by this family when others only took. My son may have abandoned his vows, but I never will. What is truly yours must return to you." Tears stung my eyes. For so long, I thought everyone in that family had turned against me. Yet here was proof someone had seen my worth. Then Mr. Grant revealed the shocking part: Charles left behind a second will. "It's legally binding. Your ex-husband has no idea it exists." I gasped. "A second will?" He nodded. "And in it, the mansion, the Tesla, and a significant part of the estate were placed in your name." For the first time in months, I felt power stir inside me. My broken heart began to steady. The game had just shifted. Mr. Grant slid something heavy across the table, a sleek black briefcase. Its polished surface gleamed, and my breath caught as the metal locks clicked open. Inside, neatly arranged, were property deeds, account records, and a stack of legal documents. At the very top rested the second will. "Charles prepared this for you," Mr. Grant explained. "He wanted you to hold the proof yourself, not just trust lawyers. He didn't want his son's arrogance to erase what was rightfully yours." I traced my fingers over the mansion's deed, my heart pounding. That house wasn't just walls and furniture, it had been my dream, my home. Seeing it listed under my name again filled me with a rush of vindication. Mr. Grant leaned closer. This is powerful leverage. But we must be careful. If your ex discovers too early, he'll try to destroy everything. I nodded slowly, clutching the briefcase. Months ago, I was thrown out with nothing, made to feel worthless. Now I held the key to everything my ex-husband thought he had taken forever. For the first time, I wasn't just surviving. I was preparing. And deep down, I knew, I would not waste this chance. That night, I placed the briefcase on my tiny kitchen table and stared at it for hours. It wasn't just filled with papers, it was filled with justice. I thought about the night he laughed, watching me pack my clothes into garbage bags while his secretary stood by smirking. I thought about how he paraded the Tesla around town, showing off his victory. He believed I was gone, defeated, and forgotten. But now? Now I had the real weapon. I carefully organized each document, memorizing every detail. The mansion, the accounts, even family heirlooms, all linked back to me. My ex-husband was living in a fantasy, one that would soon shatter. Still, I reminded myself of Mr. Grant's warning: timing was everything. If I rushed, he might bury the evidence under his lawyers and lies. I had to be patient. As I locked the briefcase and slid it under my bed, I whispered to myself, "You laughed at me once. Soon, I'll be the one smiling." For the first time in months, I slept soundly. The pain of betrayal hadn't vanished, but something new burned brighter inside me: revenge, cold and silent, waiting for its moment. The next morning, I walked past the mansion. My chest tightened as I saw him watering the front lawn, looking so smug in his expensive watch and sunglasses. The Tesla was parked proudly in the driveway, gleaming in the sunlight. He didn't notice me at first, but when he did, he smirked. "Still living in that shoebox apartment?" he called out. His voice dripped with arrogance. I forced myself to smile faintly. "Just passing by," I replied, keeping my tone light. Inside, my blood boiled. If only he knew what I carried under my bed. He laughed, waving me off like a beggar. "You should move on, Leah. Some people are built for mansions, others for scraps." I clenched my fists but said nothing. Silence was my shield, and patience was my weapon. As I turned away, I whispered under my breath, "Enjoy it while you can." Walking back to my small apartment, I felt stronger than before. Seeing his arrogance only confirmed what I already knew: when the truth came out, the fall would be devastating. And I promised myself this: when the moment came, I wouldn't just take back what was mine. I'd make sure he remembered it forever. I spent the next week preparing in silence. Each night, I unlocked the briefcase, studying the second will until I could recite every word. I traced the signatures, memorized the dates, and learned the legal language. This wasn't just paper, it was power. I started researching. I visited the library, reading about inheritance disputes and property laws. I even practiced speaking in front of the mirror, rehearsing the day I would confront him. Still, I kept my routine simple. I went to work at the little shop, paid my rent on time, and never let anyone suspect the storm brewing beneath my calm face. Mr. Grant called once. "Leah," he said, "we'll move when the timing is right." His arrogance is our best weapon. I nodded, though he couldn't see me. My ex was flaunting his false victory everywhere, appearing in magazines with his secretary, smiling like he'd built his empire on his own. But what he didn't know was that his entire foundation rested on lies. And one day soon, I would pull the ground from beneath his feet. The briefcase wasn't just my protection. It was my sword. And I was learning how to use it. I took the first careful steps toward rebuilding my life. The briefcase sat locked under my bed, but I used parts of the assets wisely. I negotiated a small loan using a minor deed as guarantee. It felt strange to borrow after losing so much, but it was the right move. I hired 2 loyal workers I had known from older projects. They believed in me and came ready to work. We fixed a small house a neighbor owned. The owner saw our work and told friends. Soon more local jobs arrived. Each project we finished brought in more pay and more trust. I kept careful books and paid everyone on time. Word spread that Leah Black could make homes strong and beautiful. I bought simple tools and a small truck to carry materials. At night I returned to my apartment and read the will again, feeling grateful and steady. I did not rush to the mansion. I wanted a base to grow from. My brother visited one day and clapped my shoulder. He said, "I knew you had it in you." His words warmed me. I smiled back and felt the first real peace in a long while. Truly. Success in small steps often speaks louder than any boast. Within 2 months, my name began to circulate again. People who once turned their backs whispered about how I was rising from nothing. One afternoon, a woman came into the shop where I still worked part-time. She leaned across the counter and whispered, "I heard you're building something new. Is it true?" I smiled politely but gave no answer. Rumors were my shield now. The less I revealed, the more people speculated. Of course, whispers travel fast, and soon enough, they reached my ex-husband. He sent a message through a mutual acquaintance, "Tell Leah to stop pretending. She'll never stand on her own." The arrogance in his words almost made me laugh. He still believed I was powerless. What he didn't know was that each project I completed, each client I helped, was a foundation stone for something much bigger. And behind it all, the briefcase remained untouched, waiting for its moment. At night, I sat by the window with a cup of tea, watching the city lights flicker. My heart no longer felt broken, it felt sharpened. Revenge wasn't far anymore. It was coming closer. One weekend, I passed by the mansion again, only this time, it looked different. My ex-husband and his secretary were hosting a grand party. Cars lined the street, music spilled from the windows, and laughter echoed across the lawn. I stood quietly in the shadows, watching as he clinked glasses with wealthy guests. The Tesla was parked front and center like a trophy. He kissed her cheek in front of everyone, flashing that arrogant smile. "Look at us," he boasted loudly enough for neighbors to hear. "This is what happens when you upgrade." The words stabbed, but only for a moment. Because deep inside, I knew a truth none of them could imagine, that mansion wasn't his to flaunt. I noticed one detail that nearly made me laugh. Hanging proudly in the hallway was Charles Black's portrait, staring down as if judging the false king beneath him. I whispered under my breath, "Your father chose better than this." No one noticed as I turned and walked away. They saw me as an outsider, a woman discarded. But I carried a secret powerful enough to collapse his glittering world in an instant. And soon, I would. The next day, Mr. Grant called me urgently. His voice was low but firm. "Leah, your ex is getting reckless. He's spending heavily and bragging about his position. That kind of behavior will draw attention." I sighed, remembering the party. I saw it myself. He thinks he's untouchable. "That arrogance," Mr. Grant said, "will be his undoing. But you must stay patient. If he suspects you have leverage, he'll strike first. And trust me, he would burn everything before letting you win." His words made me shiver. My ex had always been prideful, but now his pride had grown dangerous. Still, I nodded. "I'll wait." After the call, I sat with the briefcase open on my table. The documents looked back at me like silent soldiers. They held power, but only if I released them at the right time. I thought of his secretary, parading in jewelry bought with money that wasn't even his. I thought of the mansion, filled with guests who praised a man built on lies. Patience, I reminded myself. A storm doesn't announce itself, it gathers quietly until it's ready to strike. And when my moment came, the crash would be deafening. It didn't take long for the cracks to appear. Whispers reached me through neighbors and old acquaintances. My ex-husband's business was faltering. Deals he bragged about never closed. Payments to suppliers were late. Behind the glittering parties, money was drying up fast. One evening, I overheard two women talking outside the grocery store. "Did you hear? He mortgaged the Tesla, one said. The other gasped. But he just bought it. I walked past them silently, hiding my smirk. He was desperate, and desperation always led to mistakes. Later that night, Mr. Grant confirmed the rumors. He's been liquidating assets, Leah. He doesn't realize yet that some of what he's selling isn't even his to touch. That statement sent a thrill through me. The mansion, the Tesla, the accounts, all protected by the second will, were legally mine. Every signature he placed on those sales was another nail in his own coffin. I locked the briefcase again, my fingers steady. For months I had lived with pain and humiliation, but now the tide was turning. His arrogance had blinded him. He thought he was untouchable. But the truth was, he was standing on borrowed ground, mine. A few days later, an ivory envelope arrived at my small apartment. The handwriting was familiar, his secretary's. Inside was an invitation to a charity gala at the mansion. My name glittered in gold ink as if I were still welcome in that world. I almost laughed. It wasn't kindness. It was mockery. He wanted me to see what I'd lost, to parade his wealth before me once more. I held the invitation for a long time, thinking. Then, carefully, I placed it on top of the briefcase. That night, I called Mr. Grant. If I go, I asked, would it matter? His voice was thoughtful. If you walk into that mansion holding the truth, you won't just be a guest, you'll be a storm. I didn't answer right away, but a fire stirred in my chest. For months, I had watched silently as he laughed at my pain. But now, he had given me the stage himself. I whispered, almost to myself, then perhaps it's time. I hung up, staring at the briefcase under my bed. The gala wouldn't just be his celebration. It could be the perfect battlefield. And this time, I wouldn't arrive empty-handed. The days before the gala felt like sharpening a blade. I laid out the documents from the briefcase, arranging them in perfect order. The second will, the property deeds, the account ledgers, all undeniable proof of the truth. I rehearsed my words in front of the mirror, steadying my voice. I wouldn't need anger. Calmness was more powerful. Let him shout, let him sneer, my silence would cut deeper. I chose my outfit carefully. Nothing flashy, but elegant enough to remind him I was not the broken woman he cast aside. A simple black dress, a silver necklace Charles had once gifted me, and heels that clicked with purpose. Ashley, my closest friend, called that evening. Are you sure about this? She asked nervously. I've never been more sure, I replied. For months, I was humiliated. Tomorrow, I walk into that house not as a victim, but as its rightful owner. When I finally zipped the briefcase and slid it beside the door, a calm washed over me. This wasn't just revenge anymore. This was restoration. And tomorrow, under the glow of chandeliers and fake smiles, the truth would finally rise. The night of the gala, the mansion glowed like a palace. Cars lined the driveway, valets rushed to open doors, and music floated into the crisp night air. For a moment, I stood at the gates, breathing deeply, briefcase in hand. Walking up the steps, I could feel eyes on me. Whispers rippled through the crowd, some surprised, some amused. My ex-husband's secretary spotted me first. Her smirk was sharp. Well, look who decided to crawl back, she whispered. I only smiled faintly and walked past her. Inside, the ballroom shimmered with gold and crystal. My ex stood at the center, surrounded by guests, champagne in hand. When he saw me, his eyebrows shot up, then curved into a mocking grin. Well, he drawled. I didn't know invitations reached everyone. Laughter followed from his circle of friends. I didn't flinch. Instead, I set the briefcase down on a polished table nearby. The sound of the metal clasp clicking open echoed louder than the music. Heads turned. I lifted the first document, holding it steady under the chandelier's glow. My voice rang clear, calm, and unshaken. Funny, I said, you've been throwing parties in a house that isn't even yours. The room froze. Glasses paused midair, and whispers broke into gasps. My ex-husband's grin faltered as I held the will high enough for everyone to see. "This," I said, laying the paper on the table, "is your father's true will. Signed, sealed, and witnessed. Every guest here can see whose name is written." Eyes widened as I pointed to the line, "Leah Black." He laughed nervously, trying to wave it off. "This is fake. Some pathetic attempt to embarrass me." But Mr. Grant, who had quietly entered behind me, stepped forward. His deep voice cut through the air, "It's not fake. I was one of the legal witnesses. Every document in that briefcase is binding. The mansion, the Tesla, several accounts, they all belong to Mrs. Leah Black." The crowd erupted in shocked murmurs. My ex's face drained of color. His secretary tugged at his arm, whispering frantically, but he pushed her away. "You can't do this," he hissed at me. "This is my life." I looked at him steadily, my voice calm. "No. You stole mine. Now I'm only taking back what was always mine." And for the first time, I saw fear flicker in his eyes. The gala collapsed into chaos. Guests whispered, phones snapped pictures, and some slipped quietly toward the exits. My ex-husband stood trembling, the confident mask stripped from his face. Mr. Grant handed copies of the documents to a few influential attendees. "You can verify them yourselves," he declared. "Every seal and signature is authentic. Charles Black intended his estate for Leah." The secretary tried to protest, but her voice cracked beneath the weight of silence pressing down. She shrank into the background, her jewelry glinting uselessly. I closed the briefcase and lifted it with steady hands. "I won't drag this further tonight," I told the room. "But tomorrow, the court will confirm what you've all seen. This mansion, this wealth, it was never his." The chandelier sparkled above me as I turned toward the door. Each step echoed like a victory drumbeat. Behind me, my ex shouted, but his words no longer carried power. Outside, the night air felt cleaner, lighter. I stood on the steps, gazing at the mansion one last time. Soon, it would be mine again. For months, he laughed while I suffered. Now, justice had spoken. And Leah Black had risen, stronger than ever. If this story moved you, don't forget to like the video, subscribe for more powerful narratives, and share your thoughts in the comments. We'd love to hear what part hit you the hardest. Thanks for watching.